Okay, so let's start with a super quick revision of the next chapter, that is returns under GST. Yes, whatever sections we are going to study in this particular chapter, from section number 37 to section number 48, that pertains to your CGST law, and along with that we are going to study some corresponding CGST rules also. Basically in this particular chapter we are going to discuss about the various returns, okay, various return, not sales return, various returns, documents, information that we are going to file it on the GST common portal. Basically we are going to submit it to the GST department, which all forms we are supposed to file, which all returns we are supposed to file, which all statements we are supposed to file, when are we supposed to file, etc. That will be discussed in this particular chapter. Starting with section number 37. Section number 37 talks about statement of outward supplies. Okay, it is going to contain a statement which it is a statement which contains the details of all the outward supplies, and that is going to be submitted in form number GSTR1. Now this GSTR1 will be applicable to whom? GSTR1 will be applicable to all the registered persons, including the casual taxable person. Remember that's small registration period. So it will be applicable to all the registered taxable person plus the casual taxable person except 6 people. Okay, except 6 people, that is, it is written on the board also, or alternatively, if you remember, because you must have revised it earlier. So any ISD, NRTP, TDS person, TCS person, your input service distributor, and the person who is providing OIDR services. Okay, to these 6 persons, your GSTR1 is not applicable, means they are not required to furnish the GSTR1. Apart from them, any other registered person will be required to file the GSTR1 on the common portal of the, that is the website. Okay, now there are 2 periodicities. This GSTR1 can either be filed monthly. By default, it has to be filed monthly. If it is being filed monthly, the due date for filing this particular return is going to be 11th of the next month. Okay, it is going to be 11th day of the next month. But sometimes they have given an option, okay, to some persons, to some registered persons, they have given an option for QRMP scheme. QRMP scheme stands for that they are allowed to file the return on quarterly basis, but payment will be done by them on monthly basis. Okay, QRMP scheme, and they are required to file this GSTR1 by 13th of the month following the end of the quarter. Means once the quarter gets over, after that 13th of the next month. Okay, this is the due date. So normal monthly taxpayers, 11th of the next month. The persons who have selected for QRMP scheme, once the quarter gets over, example April, May, June, one quarter gets over, so by 13th of July they are required to file that particular GSTR1. Right, now listen, the purpose of filing this GSTR1 is what? Okay, once I as a supplier, once I file this GSTR1, I will put all the details about my outward supplies in that GSTR1, and on the basis of this GSTR1, the input tax credit is received by the recipient in its GSTR 2A and 2B. Okay, inward supplies goes in its GSTR 2B and 2A, and eligible ITC credit goes in its GSTR 2B. So if the other person, if the recipient wants to claim a credit of the same, that credit can be taken on the basis of ITC reflected in GSTR 2B. Okay, now if I submit GSTR1, then only the credit will be available in its GSTR 2B. If I submit monthly GSTR1, monthly GSTR 2B will be generated for that particular person and it will be shown for that particular month. Okay, but if I am filing GSTR1 on quarterly basis, can we say the input tax credit will be available to that recipient very late? So can we say this is na-insafi for that other person? So the GST department has given us an option, okay, not mandatory. It has given us an option that if you are filing your GSTR1 on quarterly basis, then what you can do is you can continue filing your GSTR1 on quarterly basis, but for the first 2 months of the quarter, okay, for first 2 months of the quarter, you can furnish the details of your sales invoices in IFF. that is an invoice furnishing facility. Okay, invoice furnishing facility will be given to such persons who have opted for QRMP. Okay, now what will happen? Let's talk about April to June. Okay, for the first 2 months of the quarter, that is for April and for May, they can furnish the details of their outward supplies in IFF. Okay, as soon as we file this IFF, the detail goes in that other person's GSTR 2B. Okay, and balance invoices, okay, that is for the third month or any other invoices left, that can be submitted in your GSTR 1, which anyway you're going to file by 13th of the next month. Okay, so can we say this is one of the benefit, this is one of the facility because of which the benefit actually goes to the recipient. Are you clear with this? Okay, then the next restriction, next restriction is whatever value of invoices you are putting in this invoice furnishing facility, the total value of that cannot exceed 50 lakhs. Okay, if the value of invoices is more than 50 lakhs, then in IFF you can put the value only up to 50 lakhs. Rest invoices you can furnish it in your GSTR 1, that you are going to file it on quarterly basis. Are you clear with this? Yes. Then after that, there are some cases. Okay, there are some cases when a registered taxpayer is debarred, okay, restricted, when a particular person is restricted from furnishing GSTR 1 or IFF. Okay, there are 5 such cases. There was an amendment in this particular point. Now, there are some 5 cases where you are totally prohibited. First of all, we know that if you are a registered person, including a casual taxable person, casual taxpayer, then in such a case, you will be required to file your GSTR 1. Okay, if you have opted for quarterly, then GSTR 1 plus IFF can also be filed for you by you, so that the other person gets the credit of the same. Right? Now, there are 5 such cases. Now, they are telling that you will, okay, 5 cases. First one, if you will not be allowed to furnish your GSTR 1 for a particular month, if you have not filed your GSTR 3B for the last month. Okay, GSTR 3B is also one of the returns which we are going to study in section number 39. Okay, so you cannot file your GSTR 1 for this month. You cannot file GSTR 1 or IFF. Or we'll keep it to GSTR 1 because we are talking about monthly case only, if you have not filed your GSTR 3B for the previous month. Okay, next, you cannot file your GSTR 1 or IFF for this particular month or for this particular quarter if you have not filed your GSTR 3B for the previous quarter. Means not filing your returns for the previous tax period will debar you from filing your future GSTR 1 or IFF. Okay, next one. You will not be allowed to file your GSTR 1 or IFF if you have been served a notice or if you have been served an intimation under rule number 88C. Okay, ma'am, what do you mean by rule number 88C? In rule number 88C, a notification or a intimation is served on you if you have shown more tax payable as per GSTR 1, okay, but less tax payable in your GSTR 3B. What will happen if you show more tax payable in your GSTR 1? Can we say more credit will be given to the other person? But when the ultimately you are going to pay the tax in GSTR 3B, at that time you have shown less tax payable. So either you pay the differential tax along with the interest, etc., or you furnish an explanation reply within a period of 7 days. If not done, then you are debarred from filing your GSTR 1 or IFF. Okay, that was the third condition. Fourth one, if you will not be allowed to furnish your GSTR 1 or IFF if you have been submitted with an intimation under rule number 88D. Okay, this was a new rule which was inserted. What happened in rule number 88D? Okay, in rule number 88D, if you have taken more input tax credit, okay, while filing my GSTR 3B, while calculating my tax, etc., I took more input tax credit than the amount which was reflected in my GSTR 2B. Okay, if I have taken more amount of credit, then either you reverse it and pay it back to the government along with interest, etc., or you furnish an explanation, a proper explanation within a time period of 7 days. If not done, then you will not be allowed to furnish the further GSTR 1 or IFF. That facility will be totally blocked for you on the GST common portal. Right? And last, if you have not submitted your valid bank account details, we have already studied this earlier. If you have not submitted your valid bank account details as per rule number 10A, then in that case you will not be allowed to furnish, your GSTR 1 or IFF for the periods. Right now, normally whenever you are submitting your GSTR 1, they say that, let's talk about a particular month. Okay, let's talk about April month. Okay, GSTR 1 for April month can be filed by when? It can be filed by 11th of the next month. Okay, now this GSTR 1 cannot be filed during the same month. Means GSTR 1 of April cannot be filed during April. It can start, the filing of this can start from 1st of May till 11th of May. Okay, but there are two exceptions where the returns can be filed during the current period also. Okay, one is if you are a casual taxpayer, because casual taxpayer registration is for a short period, so it can get over any time. So you need not wait for the month to get over. Okay, and next one, when your registration has been cancelled, at that time also you can file whatever are the returns applicable to you. You can file even without waiting for that particular month or quarter to get over. Okay, these are the only two exceptions, and these pointers are required to be remembered. Then you have got the contents of GSTR 1. This is a one-time read thing. What all things are presented in your GSTR 1, that is written here. Okay, now the document that you are submitting, that is GSTR 1, or in case of QRMP persons, if you are submitting IFF for the first 2 months, then in such a case, what all details are reported in IFF and what all details are reported in your GSTR 1, let's discuss about it. Okay, what was the main purpose of filing IFF? So that the other person gets the credit. Right? Can we say other person only if he is a B2B, only if he is a registered person, only then he will get the credit? Right? So can we say in IFF, we just have to mention all the details of the B2B invoices. Okay, interstate as well as intrastate, both of it, interstate as well as intrastate, both of the details are required to be submitted. Okay, both the details are, but only related to B2B invoices. And similarly, all the debit note and credit note details of B2B supplies are required to be submitted in the IFF. Okay, once that is done, your IFF is over. Only this much is to be reported in IFF. Rest details you can put it in your GSTR 1. Now, what all other details? Okay, what all other details will go in your GSTR 1? Okay, first of all, can we say, I'll just erase this so that it becomes simple for you. In your GSTR 1, can we say first of all, in-depth invoice-wise details of all the B2B supplies should be presented there. Okay, acha, one more thing, the detail which was already put in your IFF, you need not repeat it again in GSTR 1 because that credit has already been passed. Okay, other B2B supplies, interstate as well as intrastate, invoice wise detail needs to be put up there. And for B2C, only for interstate where the invoice value exceeds 2.5 lakhs, okay, when I have sold it to a customer, directly to a customer, but it is interstate, and if the invoice value is more than 2.5 lakhs, please submit the details invoice wise. Okay, these are the only two cases where you have to give invoice wise details. Okay, and but for all the other cases, that is B2C interstate small invoices or B2C intrastate invoices, for that even if you submit the consolidated details, okay, consolidated details rate wise, rate of tax wise, 18%, this much is the total amount, 12%, this much is the total. Even if you submit it that way, that information is sufficient. Okay, and uploading the details of your invoices does not mean that you have to upload the scanned invoices. Okay, does not mean that you have to upload the scanned invoices. You just have to give the details, invoice number, invoice date, value, net value plus tax value, total amount, HSN, and only those details are required to be submitted. No need to submit the photocopy or scanned copy of the invoice. That is not at all required. Okay, HSN details as was required to be mentioned in the invoice, same requirement is applicable here also, and that information has to be given while submitting your GSTR 1, right? Now, let's say, if you have already submitted your GSTR1, okay, if you have already submitted your GSTR1 earlier, but now if you come to know that there was some mistake in the details that you had already submitted, then in such a case, can you rectify it? Answer is yes. If you yourself have come to know about that particular mistake, you can definitely rectify. But if it was found out by the authorities, okay, if it was found out by any particular authorities during scrutiny, etc., then it cannot be rectified. Okay, what is the time period for doing the rectification? Time period for doing the rectification is 30th November of the next year, or the date of filing the annual return, whichever is earlier. That is the time period for doing the rectification, and in those there are some specific tables, amendment tables, which are provided in the return. In those tables you can put the data relating to the data which you want to amend. Right now, suppose if your end there is no data, okay, there is no data at all in any of the tables in your GSTR1, okay, still you are required to file a nil GSTR1. That is mandatory. You cannot say that there are no business transactions, so I will not file GSTR1. Nonsense, nahi chalega. Okay, so in that case you will have to file a nil GSTR1 that can be filed on the common portal, or that can be filed using a SMS facility from the mobile number of that particular registered person. Are you clear with this? Yes. Then after that, suppose if you could not file the GSTR1 within the given due date, 11th of the next month or 13th of the next month, etc., then max to max it can be filed up to a period of 3 years from the original due date of filing that return, and government can put, GST department, etc., can extend this time period further in some exceptional circumstances. Are you clear till here? Yes, this was all about your section number 37, all about our GSTR1 IFF facility, etc. Okay, going to the next section, that is section number 38, which talks about input tax credit which is generated for the recipient. So as soon as the supplier files the GSTR1 or the invoice furnishing facility, then the data gets reflected in the recipient's GST 2A and GST 2B. In these two particular forms, the data gets reflected there. Right, and GSTR 2A, the data gets reflected on real-time basis, and in GSTR 2B, the data gets reflected after a particular date. Means GSTR 2B is available to us after a particular date. Okay, so once a supplier furnishes GSTR1, can you see this? Once a supplier furnishes GSTR1 or IFF, the data gets reflected in our GSTR 2A. Okay, for composition dealer, the data gets reflected for him in GSTR 4A. For ISD, the data gets reflected in his GSTR 6A. Are you clear with this? Okay, now listen, GSTR 2B plays a very special role. Okay, GSTR 2B plays a very special role because whatever amount of input tax credit is available in your GSTR 2B, only that much amount of credit can be availed by you. Are you clear with this? Okay, now listen, the persons who were filing the GSTR1, just try to understand the dates here, everyone. If a particular person is filing the GSTR1 for a particular month, okay, let's say he is filing the GSTR1 for the month of April on monthly basis. So what is the due date for filing this GSTR1? Due date for him will be 11th of the next month. So by 11th of May, for the month of April, by 11th of May, he is going to furnish the data, right? So, and in case of quarterly return filers, can he file the IFF for the month of April? So, IFF will be filed by 13th of May, 13th of the next month. Yes. In such a case, out of these two dates, whichever is later, that is 13th, whatever data has been put in that GSTR1 till 13th, GSTR1 or IFF till 13th, that will be available to the recipient for claiming the input tax credit in its GSTR 2B for that particular month. So the recipient, whatever ITC is put in GSTR 2B till 13th of May, that much amount of credit ITC can be availed by the recipient for the month of April. Okay, suppose if the supplier does a delay in filing beyond 13th, then in that case, that much amount of input tax credit will be available to the recipient for the next month. Are you clear with this? Yes, multiple examples, etc. are given here for your reference. Okay, so there is a cutoff date, na? there is a cutoff date. All the data which has been put till 13th of the next month, only that much amount of credit can be taken by the recipient in the GSTR 2B for that respective month. Okay, this was all about your section number 38. Now going on to the most important section of the chapter, that is section number 39, because we are going to study multiple things in this particular section. Section number 39 talks about furnishing of returns. Okay, GSTR 1, which we were discussing, that is generally not called as return. Okay, we may call it as return, but that is actually a statement of all the outward supplies. Okay, that is a statement of all the outward supplies. But now in section number 39, we are going to study about different types of returns. Okay, now first of all, the most important return, can you see here? Yes, the most important return, that is GSTR 3B, we are required to furnish. By default, they say that it is a monthly return, but the persons who had opted for that QRMP scheme, they can file this GSTR 3B also on quarterly basis. Okay, again, this GSTR 3B is to be filed by every registered person, including casual taxable person, excluding those 6 persons, same 6 persons. Okay, so applicability for GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B is same. Applicability for both of them is same. And now this return, now see, GSTR 1 consisted of the details of all the outward supplies. Okay, GSTR 3B is going to contain all the details. Outward supply how much, inward supply how much, tax payable how much, input tax credit how much. All those details will be included in your GSTR 3B. And finally from here you are going to get how much amount of tax is payable. Okay, so that by default it has to be paid on monthly basis. Okay, due date is 20th of the next month. GSTR 1 due date was 11th of the next month. GSTR 3B is 20th of the next month. But the people who have opted for QRMP scheme, can we say they had filed their GSTR 1 also on the quarterly basis? GSTR 3B can also be filed by them on quarterly basis, and due date for that is 22nd or 24th, either 22nd or 24th of the next month, immediately after the quarter gets over. Okay, if we talk about April to June, then the due date will be either 22nd or 24th of the July. Right, ma'am, why 22nd or 24th? That depends from state to state. Okay, wherever you are registered. So suppose if I am registered in Maharashtra, the due date for me will be 22nd of the next month after the quarter gets over. Suppose if I am registered in Uttarakhand or Haryana or Rajasthan, etc., due date for me will be 24th of the next month. Okay, this is the due date for which form, for which return? This is for GSTR 3B. Are you clear with this? Okay, now monthly return, due date was 20th of the next month. Quarterly is 22nd or 24th of the next month. Okay, now who is eligible for this QRMP? Okay, we did not discuss that. We just studied that if you have opted for QRMP, you can file your quarterly returns instead of monthly returns. So now, first of all, this is an optional scheme. If you want to come for QRMP, come for QRMP, provided your aggregate turnover, total of all the GSTINs under one particular PAN. If your aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year, if it does not exceed 5 crore, means maximum amount is 5 crore, then you are eligible for selecting the scheme of QRMP. But OIDR, the persons who are providing OIDR services, they cannot opt for QRMP. Okay, they cannot opt for QRMP. Whatever return will be applicable for them, they have to do it on monthly basis. And next one, the date when you are opting. Okay, the date when you are opting for this QRMP scheme, on that particular date, whatever returns should have been filed. Okay, whatever previous returns, GST returns should have been filed, that should have been actually filed on the date of exercising the option. Means there should be no delays in filing the tax returns for the previous period. If there is a delay, then you cannot opt for this QRMP scheme. Are you clear with this? Yes. So basic eligibility is if your aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year does not exceed 5 crore, then you are eligible for QRMP, and whatever was the last return that you should have furnished by this particular date, that should have been actually furnished, then only you are eligible for QRMP. Okay, now if suppose let's say till the last year, okay, till March, let's say till March 2024, I was filing the return on monthly basis. Okay, now I came to know about this QRMP, and then I thought I will go with this QRMP scheme because anyway my turnover is very less. Okay, if my turnover is very less, so I thought of opting for QRMP from the current financial year, that is from April onwards. So when should, first of all, you have to intimate it on the common portal that you want to go for the quarterly returns. Okay, now if you want to go for the quarterly returns, there is a particular time period within which you have to select that particular option on the common portal. What is that time period? It is first day, okay, listen, first day of the second month of the preceding quarter. I am repeating, first day of the second month of the preceding quarter till the last day of the first month of the current quarter. Okay, now for which particular quarter you want to opt for QRMP? Let's say April to June you wanted to opt for QRMP scheme. Okay, so you have to opt it from between which dates? Between first day of the second month of the previous quarter. Previous quarter was Jan to March. Okay, Jan to March. Second month will be February. So between 1st of February to which day? Last day of the first month of the current quarter. Last day of the first month of the current quarter. Current quarter for which you want to opt is April to June. First month is April. Last day of April is 30 April. So, between 1st Feb to 30 April, between this particular time frame, you have to opt for the scheme of QRMP. Are you clear with this? So, basically, I can just simplify and say it, last 2 months of the previous quarter and first month of this particular quarter. These 3 months time period is available to you for opting for the QRMP, and once if you have opted for QRMP, then you can continue with it till the time you don't opt out for it or till the time you don't become ineligible for this QRMP. And again, if you want to opt out voluntarily, okay, if you want to opt out voluntarily out of this QRMP, then again the same time period will be applicable for opting out of this QRMP also. Are you clear till here? Yes, okay. Now, what if there are no transactions? Okay, what if there is no entry, nothing in your GSTR 3B? Still, you are required to file this nil GSTR 3B even if there are no business transactions. And again, this can be filed on the common portal or it can be filed by SMS facility. And max, there is a particular time period given for filing the GSTR 3B returns. But if there is a maximum time period which can be allowed is up to 3 years from the date of filing the original due date. Yes, if there is any mistake, okay, if there are any errors or omission in your GSTR 3B. Now listen, GSTR 3B is practically auto-populated, okay. All the sales details will be fetched from your GSTR 1, okay. All your inward supplies will be fetched from your GSTR 2A. All your ITC which will be fetched from your GSTR 2B. Okay, still if you have put any manual data and later if you realize that there is any omission, so whenever you have realized that there is some mistake, you can do the rectification except when it was found by scrutiny, etc. Okay, if you yourself found the mistake, you can rectify it. But if department has found the mistake, you cannot say that, okay, don't worry, I will rectify and then you can consider the revised return. No. Okay, and time limit for rectification remains the same, 30th November of the next year or the date of filing the annual return, whichever is earlier. And whenever you are filing your returns, you have to make sure that your returns are signed. Without signature, return is considered as invalid and it does not get uploaded on the portal at all. Okay, so either digital signature or Aadhaar based OTP will be used for the purpose of verifying the return. Are you clear till here? This was all about your GSTR 3B. Okay, now going on to the other returns. Other return is, next one is your GSTR 4. GSTR 4 talks about return for composition dealer. Composition dealer section number 10. Yes, now these people are required to file the return on yearly basis. They have to file this GSTR 4 on yearly basis. That is by 30th April after the year gets over. But the payment is required to be done. Self-assessment payment is required to be done by them on quarterly basis. While doing the payment on quarterly basis, they are required to file a form GST CMP composition CMP 08 on quarterly basis, and they are required to do the payment by way of electronic cash ledger because anyway credit is not available to them. Okay, due date for GSTR 4 which is filed on yearly basis, the due date is 30 April of the next year. For GST CMP 08, the due date is 18th of the next month after the quarter gets over. Okay, if we talk about July, August, September quarter, then the due date will be 18th of October. Are you clear with this? Yes. Then after that, suppose if there is no data for GST CMP 08, still it is mandatory for them to file the nil returns. Yes. Now listen, let's say for example, earlier I was a regular taxpayer. Now I am coming into composition scheme. Okay. So now can we say there is something called as transition that is happening here? So for this prior period, can we say that person is required to still file GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B? Yes. So that has to be filed till the due date of furnishing the return for the month of September, next September. Okay. Or till the date of filing the annual return, whichever is earlier. Okay. Now listen, see, now since we are coming under composition, can we say now GSTR 1 and 3B will not be applicable because now GSTR 4 will be applicable. But for the prior period, is he still required to file GSTR 1 or 3B? Yes, so that should be filed till the whatever is the due date for filing the return for the upcoming September month, or the date of filing the annual annual return for the last year, whichever is earlier. Okay, if there is a second type of transition, if I am registered as a composition person, if I was registered as a composition person, but now I want to get registered as a regular taxpayer. So can we say now again, earlier GSTR 4 was applicable. Now again GSTR 1 or GSTR 3B will become applicable. So now he will have to. So now for this earlier period, which return will he file? He will have to file GSTR 4. By which date? GSTR 4 is required to be filed by 30th April after the year gets over, and for the payment he will have to file GST CMP 08 by 18th of the next month after the quarter gets over. Are you clear with it? These time periods are same, na? ठीक है. Now there are some other returns. Okay, now there are some other returns. First return we saw GSTR 3B. Second return that we saw was GSTR 4 for composition dealer, and the next one is your other returns. Okay, now other returns for NRTP, non-resident, coming from outside India, selling the goods here in India. So they were required to obtain registration. Now they were not required to file GSTR 1 or 3B, etc. So they have to file GSTR 5. Monthly return is there, which they are required to file within a time period of 13 days after the month gets over, or within 7 days from the validity of their registration gets over, whichever is earlier. Now, can we say their registration validity will be for a particular period only? So if their validity is getting over in between a month, so whenever the validity gets over within a period of 7 days, they have to file this GSTR 5. Okay, yes, and NRTP is not required to file the annual return, which we will submit, which we will study ahead in form GSTR 9. Okay, similarly ISD. Okay, ISD is such a person who was taking all the inward supplies of the services, and it was taking full credit, and then it was distributing it to its offices. So ISD is, again, it was not required to file GSTR 1 and 3B. So it will be filing a monthly return in form GSTR 6 for distributing the credit to its unit. That has to be filed before 13th of the next month. Are you clear with this? Okay, then next one, TDS returns, that government deductors, etc. They were deducting my TDS. They have to pay the TDS to the government within and file the return in GSTR 7 before 10th of the next month, and then a TDS certificate will be generated in GSTR 7A, and credit will be available to the deductee but in his electronic cash ledger. Do you recollect this? Yes, and next few more returns that we can consider here itself, that is GSTR 8. Okay, GSTR 8, just like we did GSTR 7 for TDS, similarly GSTR 8 will be applicable. If you want, I'll just show it to you in the notes. GSTR 8 will be applicable for TCS. Okay, for that again 10th of the next month is going to be the due date. Okay, and the next one is going to be the return, which is going to be filed by the persons who are providing OIDR services or online money gaming services. They are going to file the GSTR 5A. Okay, and again this will be filed on monthly basis by 20th of the next month. Okay, so for all the different persons, normally registered person and your casual taxable person, they were required to file your GSTR 3B and GSTR 1. Okay, other 6 persons, that is your NRTP, then your TDS person, TCS person, OIDR person, OIDAR, okay, composition scheme person, and one more, that is your ISD. They were not required to file your GSTR 3B and GSTR 1. So for all of them taken individually, we have studied about the different returns that they are required to furnish. Are you clear till here, everyone? Yes? Okay. Now. Okay. So till there we have completed. Now going on to the last part of section number 39. Okay, going on to the last part of section number 39. Section number 39 subsection 7 talks about due date for payment of tax. Okay, now we studied about the filing of returns, due date of filing the returns, GSTR 1, 3B and so many other returns also. But what about the due date for payment of taxes? Okay, now let's say by default they say that under GST what they have done is, whenever you are required to file the return, at that time you are required to pay the tax. Means which date is linked with which date? The date of filing of returns is linked with the date of payment of the taxes. Okay, but in some cases it is delinked. Okay, example, in case of composition scheme. Okay, in case of composition scheme, you were filing your GSTR 4 by 30th April of the next year. Okay, but payment is required to be done on quarterly basis. Remember, in GST CMP 08, the payment was required to be done by 18th of the next month. So there the date of filing the return and date of making the payment is different. Okay, similarly for NRTP and CTP. Okay, for NRTP and CTP also, they were, remember we had studied in the registration chapter, while obtaining the registration, they were required to pay some taxes in advance, estimated liability in advance. So they were filing their returns later, but tax was paid earlier itself. Okay, similarly, okay, now listen, monthly payments, the people who are filing monthly returns, okay, means the people who are filing your GSTR 3B on monthly basis, for them the due date is linked to the returns. Okay, that is, what was the due date for monthly return filers of GSTR 3B? GSTR 3B monthly return filers, they were required to file by 20th of the next month. So 20th becomes the due date for payment of tax for them. Okay, so that was linked with the return. But what about QRMP people? They are going to file the GSTR 3B on quarterly basis, but payment has to be done on monthly basis. Okay, for the first 2 months. See, for the third month, anyway the quarter is going to get over. So the due date will be 22nd or 24th of the next month. But for the first 2 months of the quarter, due date for them is going to be 25th of the next month. Okay, example, let me give you an example for QRMP people. Let's talk about April to June. Okay, if they have opted for QRMP scheme for the month of April, only payment by using a challan will be done by 25th of May. Okay, then payment for the month of May will be done by 25th of June. Then payment for the month of June. Now can we say quarter has ended here? What will be the due date for filing the return of GSTR 3B for this quarter? It will be 22nd or 24th of July. So that will become the due date for making the payment of tax for that last month. Are you clear with this? Yes, normally in all the other cases, whatever is the due date of filing the return, that becomes the due date for payment of taxes. Example, ma'am, TDS, TCS, remember the time when you are required to pay the tax to the government is 10th of the next month. That is the same date as that of filing the returns. GSTR 7, GSTR 8. Very clear with this? Okay. Now, there are two ways. How are we supposed to pay the tax? Just try to understand. Now see, if you are doing monthly payments, monthly returns, then there is no problem. Whenever you file the returns, you pay the taxes. Okay. But what about QRMP people? What about QRMP people? Can we say these QRMP people, for the first 2 months of the quarter, they are going to pay the taxes by 25th of the next month, and finally for the entire quarter they will come to know about the liability only after the quarter gets over? Yes. So there are two methods which have been provided. First method is fixed sum method and second method is your self-assessment method. Okay, in fixed sum, government gives you option. Whichever method you want to follow, you follow. Okay, that option comes on the GST portal while making the payment of taxes. In case of fixed sum method, they tell you that if for the last quarter, okay, if for the last quarter you had filed quarterly return, if for the last quarter you had filed quarterly returns, then whatever was the tax paid in that quarter in cash, okay, whatever was the total cash paid in cash during, whatever was the total amount of tax which was paid in cash during the last quarter, multiplied by 35%. Okay, multiplied by 35% is to be paid each in first month as well as second month for this particular quarter. Okay, example, if I am talking about payment of tax for April, then I will have to check whether in the last quarter had I filed the return on quarterly basis. If the return for the last quarter was also filed on quarterly basis, how much was the tax paid during Jan to March? Let's say tax paid during Jan to March was 100 rupees by electronic cash ledger. So 100 multiplied by 35%, 35 rupees I have to pay in April also, and 35 rupees I have to pay in May also. This becomes a fixed sum. Are you clear with this? And then whatever is the balancing figure of tax payable, that you can pay it while filing the quarterly returns. Okay, that is one method. Okay, or suppose what if the last return that you had filed was not quarterly basis, that was monthly. So whatever tax you had paid in the last month, example in the month of March, let's say you had paid 100 rupees. So entire 100 rupees which you had paid in the month of March, so 100% of it has to be paid in each of these months now. With the 100 which I had paid in the last March, same 100 I am going to pay in the month of April also, and same 100 I am going to pay it in the month of May also. Are you understanding this? Yes. Examples for that is given in your book. Acha, but suppose if you have sufficient amount. Now I got, in the first case I had got 35 rupees and 35 rupees that was payable. In the second example I got 100 rupees which is payable. Okay, now let's say you have got sufficient amount of tax kept in your, or credit kept in your electronic cash ledger or electronic credit ledger. Then in that case, even if you don't pay the tax in this fixed sum method, that is okay, no problem in that. Are you clear with this? Okay, that was your fixed sum method where you paid 35% of the tax paid in the last quarter, or where you paid 100% of the tax paid in the last month. Okay, and then another method is a logical method, that is self-assessment method. That is when your April month gets over. When your April month gets over, at that point of time, you self-assess your liability. Okay, how much is your output tax liability minus how much is your input tax liability as per GSTR 2B. Whatever is the difference, you pay it to the government. Are you clear with this? Same thing you do for April, same thing you do for May, and then actual liability you come to know once the June quarter gets over. Are you clear with this? Yes. Now in this case, can there be mistake in determining the amount of tax payable? Yes. Now let's say if you had followed fixed sum method, okay, 35% or 100% of the tax, if you had followed fixed sum method, and if 35 rupees and 35 rupees was the tax liability for April and May, that you already paid. Okay, but later we come to know that instead of this 35 and 35, 40 rupees was payable for the month of April and May. Then in that case, can we say there was a shortfall of 5 rupees and 5 rupees for each month? On that 5 and 5 rupees, there will be no interest applicable for the first 2 months. Okay, provided you pay the shortfall of total 10 rupees when you are filing the quarterly return. Okay, why there is no interest applicable? Because government told you to pay 35% and you normally paid 35%. Okay, so but when the quarter gets over, at that time, are you required to pay the shortfall? Yes, at that time, while filing the GSTR 3B quarterly, I will pay the shortfall. If I don't pay the shortfall, then the interest will be applicable from the due date of filing the GSTR 3B till the date of actual payment. Okay, but there will be no interest for the first 2 months. Okay, but in case of self-assessment method, if there was any shortfall in the taxes paid, then in that case interest will be applicable from the date of payment of taxes from the first month itself, because here you had self-assessed the liability. Government did not tell you about this particular liability. Very clear with this. Okay, example for the first month, April, the due date for making the payment of tax was 25th of the next month, that is 25th of May. Okay, and the tax liability which we came to know later on for the month of April was 40, whereas let's say we paid only 30 rupees as self-assessed tax. So there is a shortfall of 10. So right from 26th, right from immediately next day till the date of actually paying that shortfall, till that day the interest will be applicable. Okay, so in case of fixed method, interest is not applicable for the first 2 months. But if you don't pay it till the due date of filing the return, then interest will start becoming applicable from then. But in case of self-assessment, interest is applicable right from the due date of making the payment in that monthly returns. Are you clear till here, everyone? Yes. Then after that, going ahead to the other types of returns and other statements. Okay, mainly we have studied about GSTR 1, we studied about IFF, we studied about our GSTR 3B, the most important return. Yes, we studied about all these returns. Then we studied about those 6 people submitting their own returns. Okay, now there are some other statements and there are some other returns which are left. Just let's study about those returns, the last part. Okay, the first return which is coming up here is first return. Okay, now do you recollect in the registration chapter? Okay, first return coming under section number 40. Do you recollect in the registration chapter we had studied that in registration chapter also and in invoices chapter also we studied about revised invoices. Do you recollect that concept? Okay, whenever a person becomes liable for registration, if he applies for registration within a time period of 30 days, then he becomes then his registration certificate will be granted with effect from the day when he was liable for registration. So for this period, that is the day when he become liable for registration till the date his registration certificate was granted, for this period he can issue revised invoices in which he can collect GST. Yes, for that, can he show that in his GSTR 1? Can he show the details of his outward supplies for this particular period? Yes, he can show it in the first return so that the other person can take the benefit of input tax credit. So that is called as your first return, that is applicable when you are newly registered. Okay, then going on to the next one. Next one is very, very important, which talks about GSTR 9, 9A, 9B, 9C, etc. Okay, now GSTR 9 or 9A, it basically talks about the annual return. First of all, who is required to furnish an annual return? Okay, annual return is to be filed again by default by every registered taxable person, but there are some people who are not required to file this annual return. One is CTP and NRTP. Okay, your CTP is making a difference. Earlier CTP was coming with registered person, here CTP is going under exception. CTP, NRTP, okay, then your ISD, no need to file the annual return. Then TDS person, TCS person, no need to file the annual return. Or any other central government or state government department or local authority whose books of accounts are audited by CAG. Okay, these 5-6 people are not required. These 5-6 people are not required to furnish their annual return at all. Apart from this, other persons, example a normal registered person, a composition taxpayer, etc., they are required to furnish their annual return by 31st December of the next year. So annual return for a particular financial year has to be submitted by 31st December of the next year. The form that we are going to use is GSTR 9. And whenever a composition supplier is filing his annual return, he is going to do it in form GSTR 9A. And one more thing which I would like to add here is, we had studied when ECO was deducting the TCS, ECO was collecting the TCS, he was required to file a statement that was in form number GSTR 9B, which is yet to be notified. Okay, so annual return is basically applicable to all these persons except for 6 persons. And along with the annual return, some persons are required to submit a self-certified reconciliation statement in form number GSTR 9C. Okay, in 9C form, they are required to furnish this self-certified reconciliation statement, but this self-certified reconciliation statement is required to be furnished only if your aggregate turnover during that relevant financial year for which you are submitting the annual return, etc., also only if that exceeds 5 crore. Okay, to only big persons this self-certified reconciliation statement is applicable. Are you clear with this? Okay, basically what is going to be shown in this? What is going to be shown in this return? In this particular self-certified annual, self-certified reconciliation statement, you are going to reconcile the figures which you have shown in your returns and the figure which is present in your audited books of accounts. Okay, you are going to reconcile that both of them are matching. If you are not able to file it by 31st December, then they say that the maximum time period within which you can submit is 3 years. 3 years from the due date of, original due date of filing this particular return. Clear till here? Yes. Then the next one, just like we studied about first return, there is something called as final return. Okay, whenever you are cancelling your registration, at that time you have to file a final return in GSTR 10. Okay, in GSTR 10, and that has to be filed within a time period of 3 months from the date of cancellation or from the date of cancellation order, whichever is later. Okay, but this has been tested many times. This is important. Final return, form number GSTR 10 that we are required to file. And last one, that is your GSTR 11, which needs to be filed by a person who is holding UIN, unique identity number, that is your foreign embassy, etc. if they have done any inward supplies on which they have paid the tax. And now if they want to claim a refund of that, so for that they will have to file this GSTR 11. Are you clear with this? Yes, these were your other returns. Okay, these were your other returns that we had to file apart from the main returns. Yes, now the last three concepts here. Next one is talking about default. Okay, default or delay in furnishing your furnishing your return. Now, whatever were the due dates of filing the return, within that particular due date, you are required to file it. Okay, if you are not filing it, then you will be issued with a notice. Okay, by automatically you will be issued with a notice where you will be told to furnish it within a time period of next 15 days. If you don't do it within the period of 15 days, then in that case the proper officer will start calculating your tax liability and your relevant interest, penalty, late fee, etc. will become applicable. Okay, now listen. There is a by default amount of late fee that is applicable if you are not filing your returns. Okay, what is the by default? Okay, if now there is a why am I saying this as by default provision? Because this was the only late fee which was earlier applicable. Then what they did was they rationalized the late fees, means they reduced the amount of late fees for certain returns. Okay, for other returns, still the by default provisions is applicable. Okay, now see, what is the by default provision here? If you have filed the return late, then the amount of late fee is equal to 200 rupees per day. That is 100 under CGST, 100 under SGST or UTGST. Total 200 rupees per day of delay or rupees 10,000. 10,000 also same, 5,000 plus 5,000. 200 rupees per day or rupees 10,000, whichever is lower, is the amount of late fee that is payable by default for all the returns. Okay, now let's see what is the revised late fee for other returns. Okay, now for GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B, okay, only for these two. Suppose if there is no tax payable, okay, if as per, let's say as per GSTR 3B, suppose if there is no tax payable, or if under your GSTR 1 there is no outward supply, then in such case, still you were required to file the nil return. Okay, but if you file it late, then there is a small amount of late fee applicable, 20 rupees per day or rupees 500, whichever is lower. Okay, 20 or 500, whichever is lower. Okay, but suppose if other cases where there are some tax payable or where there are some outward supplies, but if your preceding year's aggregate turnover does not exceed 1.5 crore, then in that case 50 rupees per day or 2000, whichever is lower. Okay, then if your turnover in the preceding financial year is more than 1.5 crore but up to 5 crore, and if there is any delay in GSTR 1 or 3B, then this 50 rupees per day remains constant. Okay, 50 rupees per day or 5,000, whichever is lower. And if your aggregate turnover of the last year exceeds 5 crore, again 50 rupees per day constant or 10,000, whichever is lower. Are you clear with this? This is the late fee. Okay, for GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B, you have been given specific late fee, so apply the specific late fee only. Okay, next one. What if composition dealer does a delay in filing GSTR 4 by 30th April of the next year? Then if there was no tax payable, then small penalty. How much was that small penalty? small late fee, 20 rupees per day or rupees 500, whichever is lower. Okay, if there is some tax payable, other cases, then normal penalty, 50 rupees per day or 2000, whichever is lower. Normal means this one. Normal means this one, 50 rupees per day or 2000, whichever is lower, that will be applicable on the composition dealer. Okay, next, last complicated provision. If there was a delay in furnishing the annual return under GSTR 9 by 31st December, then suppose if your aggregate turnover of that relevant financial year for which you did a delay in filing the annual return, if that turnover is up to 5 crore, then 50 rupees per day or 0.04% of the turnover in that state or union territory. Not aggregate turnover, 0.04% of the turnover in that state or union territory, whichever is lower, 50 rupees per day or 0.04%. Right? Acha, now next slab, if your turnover, next level, if your turnover, aggregate turnover, okay, here you have to check aggregate turnover, but while calculating the amount of late fee, you have to take the turnover of that state. If your aggregate turnover is more than 5 crore, but up to 20 crores, okay, up to 20 crore, then 0.04%, same, of the turnover in that state or rupees 100 per day, multiplied. Above it was 50 rupees per day, now 100 rupees per day, whichever is lower. And last, if your aggregate turnover is more than 20 crores and you fail to file the annual return, then 200 rupees per day or 0.50% of the turnover in the state, whichever is lower. Okay, and last, if the TDS deductor has failed to file GSTR 7, okay, then in that case, normal penalty applicable, 50 rupees per day or 2000, whichever is lower. Right? For GSTR 7, for GSTR 9, for GSTR 4, 1 and 3B, we have studied it specifically. Okay, we did not study it for GSTR 5A. We did not study it for GSTR 8 TCS. Then in that case, by default provisions will apply, that is 200 rupees per day or 10,000 rupees, whichever is lower. Okay, these are such late fees which you have to remember compulsorily because these are tested in the exam. Yes, okay, going on to the second last concept, that is GST practitioners. GST practitioners are those persons, first of all, any particular person who is enrolling himself on the common portal of the GST as a GST practitioner, then only he can call himself as a GST practitioner. Okay, that person should be an Indian citizen, he should be a person of sound mind, he should not be adjudged as an insolvent, and he should not be convicted by the court. These are the basic things which we are going to check before he gets appointed as a GST practitioner. Then he should be fulfilling any one of these three conditions. Either he can be a retired officer of any tax department where he has served as a gazetted officer not below the rank of Group B for at least 2 years. Okay, or if he was enrolled as a sales tax practitioner under the old law for at least 5 years. Okay, or if he has any of the below mentioned qualification, that is either he is a graduate, postgraduate, or he has obtained some notified degree, or if he has cleared the CA final, CS final, or the ICWI final examination. Okay, if any one of these three conditions gets fulfilled, then in such a case, that person is eligible to act as a GST practitioner, and this GST practitioner can do everything on behalf of his client: furnishing of GSTR 1, furnishing of other returns, opting for composition scheme, opting out of composition scheme, applying for enrollment number in case of transporters, generating of e-way bill, claiming of refund, doing amendment in the registration, cancellation of registration, appearing before the authorities, appearing before the appeal authorities on behalf of the client. All these things can be done by the GST practitioner. But okay, whenever a GST practitioner is filing the return, he will file the return. He will take the consent of the client will give the confirmation, and then only the GST practitioner will file. Therefore, the client is ultimately responsible, the registered person is ultimately responsible for filing the returns, and whatever data is put in the returns, for that the registered person will be responsible. Are you clear with this? Okay, and if you want to get enrolled as a GST practitioner, then you can make an application on the GST portal. If you have those qualifications, your application will be checked. If rejected, then they will provide you the reasons. Otherwise, the application will remain valid till the time it is not cancelled by the department. And yes, definitely, if you want to enroll yourself as a GST practitioner, you have to clear the examination as conducted by the portal from time to time. And if you were an old sales tax practitioner who was getting registered as a GSTP, then you can act as a GSTP for a period of 30 months. You were there under the old law. Now under the new law, you are coming as a GST practitioner. You can act as a GST practitioner for a period of 30 months. Okay, but if you want to act after a period of 30 months or beyond a period of 30 months also, if you want to act as a GST practitioner, please clear the examination. Are you clear with this? Yes. And last one is your information return. If the GST department, if the commissioner or if any proper officer under GST, if it wants any information from any third person, okay, from any other department, from any other person, because it wants to reconcile the data. Example, if GST department wants to reconcile the data with the income tax department, or if it wants to check any property purchase transaction, then it can check it with the registration department of the state. If it wants to check any motor vehicle transaction, it can check it with the with your RTO, right? If it wants to check any bank relating transaction, it can check with the RBI. So GST department can seek information from any particular third party. It will serve a notice. Okay, GST department will serve a notice on any of these persons. Can you see this? Taxable person, state government, central government, income tax authority, banking authority, electricity company, local authority, ROC of Companies Act, collector, stock exchange, RBI, etc. So GST department can serve a notice on any of these persons to submit a return called as information return. Whenever the GST department wants any information, it can ask for this information from the third party, and this third party is mandatorily required to furnish this information to the GST department. Okay, if suppose data was furnished by that particular third party to the GST department, but it was found to be defective, okay, then we will again tell them to rectify the defect within a time period of 30 days. Okay, if it is not rectified within 30 days, it will be assumed as if they never submitted the data to us. Okay, if they do not submit the data within the asked time period, or if they do not rectify it within a period of 30 days, then in that case, again we are going to submit, again we are going to issue a notice, on them to do it within a period of next 90 days. Okay, to submit it within a period of next 90 days means whenever the final notice gets served on them, from that day within a period of 90 days, they have to finally furnish the information. And if they do not do it, okay, then in that case penalty will be applicable on them. Okay, what is the amount of penalty applicable here? The amount of penalty applicable will be 100 rupees per day or rupees 5,000, whichever is lower. Okay, so if they do not furnish it upfront in the first attempt itself, they are not furnishing it, or when they are not rectifying it here within a period of 30 days, even after giving a warning of further 90 days, then in that case, this penalty will become applicable on them. Done. I hope you are clear, and I hope you are able to revise and recollect these provisions in a super awesome manner. Yes, if you enjoyed and if you liked the lecture, do let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much.